Here on Facebook Live. Hey, now we're live. I don't know, maybe we were live before. What's up, sports chiropractic community? So good to be here. We're on this Facebook Live with Dr. Stephen Franson and Jeff Hallberg. This is going to be a great series that we're doing for Fix. Stephen has been kind enough to really give us a time to talk about some really important things that I think all sports chiropractors, all chiropractors period, need to know about. And that's the life cycle, the 4 stages of a chiropractic practice. So buddy, Stephen, welcome, my friend.
Jay, it's great to see you, brother. Jeff, so glad to have you join us, man. This is going to be an awesome conversation. It's going to be, let's call it a 4-part plus 1 bonus conversation, Jay. I'm psyched for this. We're gonna be talking about the 4 seasons of the chiropractic career. I've invited Jeff to join us for this first season. So for those of you who missed our first conversation, Jay, I'll do a brief overview of those 4 seasons. Then we can talk about who this particular conversation is for. We can do a teaser for the upcoming following 3 subsequent conversations around the next 3 seasons. And then Jeff's going to help us get into the tactical and practicals around this first season, which is all about launching a new practice.
I love it, man. So let's start. Let's talk about those 4 seasons. You've spoken and written extensively about this. I've read your book. I love it. But let's go for it, man. Tell the team.
So I'll tease this. We're going to do a giveaway today, and one thing that we're going to do is we're going to give away a copy of my book, The Remarkable Practice, which is the definitive guide to creating a remarkable practice. And so we're going to do that giveaway at the end. So stick around and make sure that you listen in on that. And then I think Jeff's got some for us as well. So, all right. So we created this framework for the chiropractic industry, regardless of how you practice, who you are, where you are in the world. We were lacking some structure and a framework for how to talk about the different stages of the chiropractic career. Because let's face it, there's different stages, and therefore there's different challenges, there's different goals, there's different conversations that are happening. And in our organization, The Remarkable Practice, we actually have found this so helpful that we've organized all of our content, our coaches, our clients, and all of these into these 4 seasons of the chiropractic career. So the 4 seasons from a high level are launch, build, scale, and exit. So launch is your first year in a practice. So whether you're just moving out of an associate position and launching your own practice, first-time owner operator, or you're just a new grad and you're opening up out of school, or maybe you've got multiple practices and you're launching a new brick and mortar building remotely. So that launches that first year in practice. Build is the second year in practice and beyond, where you are going and growing, and you are the owner operator, which means that you are the singular chiropractor practitioner in there that is doing the work, right? You're the one that's head down, bum up, taking care of all those patients, delivering the value. So you love the work, but you own a job, not a business, right? So the 3rd season is where we come in and teach people how to scale, right? So scale implies that you bring in other professionals, right? You hire other chiropractors to deliver chiropractic care, as well as other paraprofessionals, right? So you start going into scale. So you're not the only one that's delivering care. So obviously you add scalability, but you add that elusive durability, right? So that's something that we will get into for sure into our scale conversation. And of course, you add transferability. In other words, you create an asset that people will compete to buy, right? So eventually you're going to move into that 4th season, which is the exit. And the exit season is when you're looking for your successor, you're looking for the legacy, you're looking for your exit. It's time to sell that business, and you want to make a graceful and profitable exit. So today we're focused on that 1st season. We're focusing on launch.
I love it. And so when we think about launch, Stephen, whether it's a new chiropractor or a chiropractor who's been practicing, let's say as an associate for several years or a longer time, and they say, you know what, I'm going to start my own practice. What are the most important things that these docs need to be thinking about and doing? Not just thinking about doing.
Yeah, I mean, where do we start? So we're gonna try to make this as practical as possible. So obviously this is a gigantic topic, but whenever I meet with a practitioner who approaches me and says that, the first thing I say is, "Are you sure?" Right? Are you sure? It's wicked hard, but it's worth it. So if you're hardwired to be somebody who should be an entrepreneurial business builder chiropractor, then absolutely you should start your own practice and build your own practice. Gosh, man, I'm so passionate about that. But it's the same question when people come, or when somebody asks me a question, hey, I'm thinking about getting married. I'm like, are you sure? I'm like, it's wicked hard, but it's worth it. Hey,
It's
we're thinking
worth
about
it,
having
right?
kids. Are you sure? It's wicked hard, but it's worth it. Same thing with launching a practice. So first things first, you got to make sure that you're sure you want to be a business owner, which is different than being a doctor. That's a conversation for a different time. We'll get more into that when it comes to build
Sure.
and scale. So second question is really getting clear on what success looks like to you. You got to get a vision story. You got to know exactly what does success look like to you. So, for most, this is a mystery question. They haven't even given it any thought. They didn't know there were options, right? They didn't know that there were different ways to practice. They get a sense of it, but they probably can't articulate it. So I don't know how much time they've spent, shadowing other doctors or in other practices and getting eyes on and experiencing different environments. Because we all know there's 100 ways to skin this cat.
At least.
So you want to know, exactly. How do you want to practice? Like, what does success look like to you? So getting a clear vision of exactly what you want your career path to look like. So then it's, how do you want to practice? Like, what kind of technique do you want to practice? Do you want to have a family practice? You want to have a sports oriented practice? You want to have a, maternity, doing pediatrics, what kind of practice do you want to operate in? And what technique you want to do? What kind of services do you want to offer? How broad of a scope do you want to cover? What type of practice do you want to have? Then of course it's where do you want to practice? What part of the world, which country, which state, which region? Do you want it to be rural? Do you want to be urban, suburban? You got to get a sense of that. Jay, this is just the beginning of the conversation, right?
Yeah.
So before they start making a move, you got to help them. We take them through this whole series of questions that help them arrive at clarity, right? Clarity is what's key. Clarity is the greatest accelerator. It's going to determine how fast and how far you go.
Yeah, that's great. When it comes to the new doc coming out of school, there's lots of different options. We'll get into that in a future series. But these docs who want to start their own practice, they go through these questions, they really get clear on what they want. There's a lot of other elements to this, the mechanics of setting up a corporation, an LLC, figuring out the real estate piece of this. And I know we have Jeff here who has opened up many, many practices. There's just a lot of the mechanics, aside from the vision piece, there's just like the mechanics of this. Talk a bit about, how do docs find the resources? How do they get organized in terms of getting those resources together so they can actually execute on the strategy?
I think this is a perfect question for Jeff to jump into this conversation, as he has launched nearly 450 practices. He is one of our remarkable experts. He's our launch expert. So Jeff, I know that you've got this whole process that you take doctors through before they, really even get sort of the readiness phase of getting ready to launch their own practice. Why don't you address that one?
Yeah, so usually when I start working with the doc, the first thing and foremost, I make sure that they are prepared, and that starts with them building a strong business plan, understanding what they're setting up their goals and their objectives for how they see this practice unfolding over the next 5 years, have somewhat of a 5-year plan, so that what they initially are going to need to do most likely is going to get business financing to get this practice off the ground. Most of the docs I work with, especially the younger docs coming out of school or associates, they still have a significant amount of student loan debt. So therefore, they're going to have to work a plan that shows a lender how they're paying off their student loan debt, as well as going to be able to pay off the debt for the practice. I would say before they do anything, that would be the number one thing that they need to start with. Once they have that solid business plan, I suggest to them that you need to really start to get in front of lenders quickly, because getting the financing for the practice can be one of the most difficult parts of getting a brand new practice off the ground. So we need to get you into underwriting, because before you can even go and talk to a landlord about leasing his space, he's going to want to see that you have the money to get the practice off the ground. Being that when a landlord looks at any offer, one of the first things they say to me, they say, Jeff, I need to see this doctor's personal financial statement. More often than not, my docs have a negative net worth because of the student loans, right? And they've been in school for a significant amount of time. They haven't built up any assets. They don't have stocks, bonds, they're not in real estate. So therefore, there's nothing really tangible to offset that negative net worth. I typically can get landlords to work with us. Once I show them that the business plan as well as the financing's in place, I can get them over the hump of the negative net worth by walking them through. Most of the docs I deal with are principal care doctors, which is they build their practices off of continued care health plans. It's very much, a lot of them do quantity, but it's more of a quality type of care. I would like to say, they're not the joint franchisees of the world, so to speak, where you're looking at $30 adjustments, try and do as many $30 adjustments as possible. So I try and separate those two when I'm working with landlords so they can really understand why a principal care to office is different than someone that might just be, looking to do straight adjustments. They're not working the subluxation, central nervous system angle, showing the tree of life in your body as in the body's innate ability to cure itself. They're not running with that. They're running more with, hey, let's do as many adjustments as possible versus an overall care plan and maintenance plan for people. And when you separate those two with landlords and you explain how these business models work, they get very intrigued because most people don't understand that part of chiropractic, I find. And once they get a good understanding of that, they look at the business plan, they get comfortable, they can get comfortable with that debt, and they're willing to do the things I need them to do for the doc, which is contribute towards the construction project. On average, building a chiropractic office costs $60 a foot. I mean, that's a large outlay, and we can't have the doctor be fronting all that money because that directly affects his operating capital to get the practice open and be successful. So a big part of my job is trying to negotiate at least half of that amount from the landlord, and as well as free rent on the front end, minimizing potentially the debt load of a large overhead rent. So negotiating a TI allowance, which probably be amortized into their lease, free rent, and an economical lease rate for the doctor, all kind of dovetails together to get the doc the perfect deal that they need to get so they can get this practice off the ground. Because on average, when you're looking at your business, typically you want to be paying about 10 to 12% of your rent. You don't want to be paying more than 10 to 12% of your rent and gross sales. That's my rule of thumb. So docs ask me all the time, they say, hey, Jeff, I don't even know what I can afford. I love this space, but I don't know. Can I afford $5,000 a month? Can I afford $7,000 a month? What can I afford? And I tell them, look at your business plan. Usually look at year 2. Year 1 will be a little bit skewed because we'll get you some free rent in there. So you might pay rent 10 months versus 12 months in the first year. And then look at your bottom line of year 2 and you look at your growth and make sure that when after you look at how many patients you saw that year before you pay anybody, you want to make sure that you're not paying more than 10 to 12% of your rent and gross sales.
That's awesome. That's a great benchmark for people to utilize. You mentioned business plan, and I think this is an important topic of conversation because I know there's a lot of chiropractors out there that have been practicing for years that have never done a business plan. Mm-hmm. So even chiros who've had years and years, decades of experience can probably learn from the business planning process. Maybe you guys could just quickly break down the components of a strong business plan. I know we don't have a lot of time today because this time is going to go fast, but what are the components that should be in a business plan for doctors to know about?
I'm going to kick it off by saying what's critically important is the ability to tell a compelling story. So there's a human factor to this, and you can hear as Jeff, dove into the numbers and the constructs and the metrics associated with this. There's best practices and associated business best practices that, this is where you want to work with an expert because you don't know what you don't know, and you can get exposed pretty fast and really leave money on the table, so to speak. And this very expensive project can become very, very expensive if you don't know where you can save money and, maybe put yourself in a better financial position out of the gate. So, but I will say that it's just so critical that you start with a story, because if you're going to be working with a banker and establishing a banking relationship, you want to make sure that you recognize you're going to be dealing with a human being, and people do business with people, right? So I can remember my first foray in 28 years ago, opening a chiropractic practice. I sat down, 27 years old. My wife Camille, was a chiropractor. We didn't have anything but debt, right? We had, $500,000 in student loans between the two of us. We were trying to sign another $500,000 lease. There we were, $1 million in the hole with 0 patients and no revenue, and we're trying to rent this premium space. And I can remember handing the business plan to these 2 bankers sitting across the desk from me, and they grabbed the business plan, pulled it over, and I put my hand on it. They both looked up at me, and I was like, "Listen, there's nothing in that business plan that's going to make you say, oh, absolutely, we got to go visit this guy. Let me tell you about what we're going to do here in this community." And I just let it rip. I let them have it. I painted the vision and the picture for me. Long story short, 10, 15 years into practice, I was taking care of both of those bankers and their families as patients still. And I brought that up. I'm like, what were you guys thinking, giving this young kid who had nothing but debt, giving me that big check? And they were like, you know what? Before we had the meeting, we had seen your business plan, and we were rolling our eyes saying, do you believe this guy? And they're like, man, you manifested it, man. And then some. I can't believe you did it. I'm like, why'd you give me the money? And he said, we both agreed that after the meeting, we'd look at each other and say, would you go and see this guy? And if we both say we'd go to him as a chiropractor, let's give him the money. So there was so much to the story. So don't leave that out of it, because I know Jeff can give you the sort of framework on the metrics.
Yeah, I mean, that's just incredible, because, that is so important. People buy from who they know, like, and trust, and you're literally buying a bank loan. And so it's really important that, that's just great advice to share that story, make it a compelling one as to why you're doing what you're doing and how you're going to impact the community at large. And just great advice. So Jeff, let's break down the components of a really strong business plan.
Well, real quick to that point, the amount of times that I've had brokers tell me that, hey, we can't make this deal happen. And I say, well, please, can I talk to the owner? Can I get him on the phone for 15 minutes? He's seen the black and white on the paper. And then I start talking, because I've been educated so well by principal care chiropractors about what they're actually doing and how they're really improving lives in the communities that they're operating in. I would say 95% of the no's I've got on paper, once I get the guy on the phone, became yeses. Those become 35-minute, 45, an hour-long conversations where we're talking about stuff that's really out of my wheelhouse. We're talking about principal care chiropractic. But once you get them to understand it a little bit, they're like, wow, I've never knew about that part of chiropractic. And they become very.
This is about the time I like to note to everybody that Jeff's not a chiropractor. You could hang out with him for an hour and you'd be like, wait a minute, well, you're not a chiropractor? He just sounds like one.
Fortunately, I get to hang out with a lot of dynamic minds, and they opened my eyes about 7 years ago to the incredible power of chiropractic. But as it relates to the business plan, of course, just the economics, breaking down how you're gonna market your practice, key. Because for most landlords, the common way for the main retail model, so to speak, is, hey, if you go and build a Home Depot or a Super Target, most business models, like if you're Chipotle or Starbucks or Sally Beauty Supply, any of these other retailers, is to, hey, we know that Super Target's going to do 1 million customers a year. We need 10% of that business. That's their business model. They're going to drive there. They're going to come see us because we're the dry cleaner next door, whatever. That's the general business model. If you go and build a Super Target, you don't have to call all those guys. They call you. They want to be part of that project. It's a big part to let in your business plan to explain that what you're going to be doing in the community, the events, talk about events you might be doing, lunches, dinners, the conversations, how you're out there educating people on chiropractic. You can't just hang chiropractic above your front door and hope that you're going to be getting 10% of the business of maybe an anchor or somebody that's next door to you.
Yeah, that's so important. And what's great about the sports chiropractic community, and certainly COVID has impacted this, but like, we are out in the field all the time. We're taking care of athletes in our offices, but we're also taking care of athletes at their locations as well, where the general public gets to see the work that we do and the impact that we have, both in terms of taking care of their injuries, but also helping them with their performance. So that's so natural for the sports chiropractor to be out in the community, and to talk about that in the business plan sounds like it's a critical element.
It is a critical element, because then you're bringing that human part, as you said, as Stephen was saying, to the black and white part, and showing people this is how we're going to be successful. At the end of the day, you're trying to, when you're talking to a lender or landlord, you're really trying to show them how you're going to limit their risk that you're going to fail. Right. Landlords are very, they're risk takers by nature, but they're also half glass empty kind of people by nature, because they've been burned by so many bad real estate deals. They've seen, and so therefore you have to literally convince them, hey, why am I going to take my risk on somebody with $250,000 in debt, never operated a business before, is going out and getting another $150,000 to another $200,000 in business loans and has zero assets.
Right.
They're like, are you kidding? I mean, we definitely want, so we don't want to do a deal with you, because that's way too much risk. So you have to show them the success you're going to have and how you're going to attain that success. And a big part of that is the human factor, but as well as the business plan and the different things that you're going to be doing as it relates to marketing and how you're going to attain the numbers you're going to attain that you have to back up the business plan.
Yeah, I'm
That's
so glad
exactly
that you said numbers, because the financial projections are also really important. They know, the banker knows, these are just projections,
Right.
but at least you should have some semblance of an idea of how you're going to grow that practice from 0 patients to however many patients you need to ensure profitability so that you can pay your rent every single month. You can pay back the loan and service the debt. So those financials are also really, really important, and they've got to make sense. They just can't be like random numbers. Steve, I know you're going to say something.
Yeah. So, to your point is the numbers do have to make sense. So it's like a three-step process. So this is a conversion situation, right? So, your certainty and your conviction and your clarity is so critical that you show up to, in this environment, and the numbers have to make sense. You have to be able to tell a story. You have to be able to make sure that they can see you're distinct from every other provider in the area, and let them see your passion and how that passion is going to live out in the application of your practice and how you practice. Whether it's I'm going to be out into the community. I love to work with athletes. I have connections with this college or this school, and I'm going to be working with these sports teams. I'm passionate about CrossFit. I'm going to work with these athletes. I'm all about performance and working with athletes that are, in this specific sport or what have you, like ties to the community and the blue ocean. You got to help them see the blue ocean of where your business is going to come from, because in every business environment, it comes down to 2 things: mitigating risk and accelerating the velocity of success. They've got to be able to see, like, in your plan that this is how we're going to practice. Like, they make assumptions when they see chiropractor. What does that mean to them? Don't leave it to interpretation. You've got to show them, if your niche is sports chiropractic, you've got to help them understand, how does that play out in this community? And here's what we're going to do in 3 bullets of, this is what we're going to address initially. I have immediate access to this group of people. This is what I'm going to be leveraging. I have these relationships that I'm going to access. So it can't be overstated that you show them that runway to success.
Yeah, I love it. And we could have a conversation about blue ocean strategy for hours, but we don't have the time today. But I do think it's really important, as you said, to tell that story. I love the idea of being able to demonstrate the story, not only from a human perspective, like having those conversations, having it in writing, and also having the financials match. Because many times as sports chiropractors, we get a patient, they come in for acute care, we fix their injury, but they're a patient of ours for life. They're either going to come back because they've got a new injury, or they want maintenance care because they want to maintain a high level of performance. They don't want to get injured again, which is what many of the smart athletes and patients do. And so you have a recurring revenue model essentially that can be demonstrated to the landlord and or the bank that says, look, these are not one and dones. These are not urgent care patients. These are patients that come to us and they become part of our ecosystem because we are their primary healthcare provider. We're going to take care of these athletes for a very, very, very long time. And I think there's a lot of obviously positive impact that happens, but a lot of economic opportunities that happen as well. Guys, we are pretty much out of time. I just want, Stephen, for you to just share in the next 60 seconds or so what we can expect. You talked about teasing the next live event. What can we expect around the build discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a timeline, right, guys? So as we move from that first year of practice, launching with an eye on build, we move into the build season, and the build season is about going and growing your practice, right? So, but we want to be careful that we don't paint ourselves into a corner where we end up owning a job instead of a business. We're going to talk about what are the key things that you want to make sure that you do not do. Make sure you do this and don't do this, so you don't paint yourself into the corner and feel like you have a job, even if you love the job, right? Because it's really tough to exit well from a job, right? So nobody wants to buy your job. So we'll teach you about building that business and turning it into the scale season, right? So as we move into the scale season, which would be the next conversation we'll have, we'll teach you about what it means to add real scalability, durability, and eventually transferability by broadening your team. And then as we move from scale into exit, we'll talk about what do you have to do to prepare that business to make sure that you can make that graceful and profitable exit. So the beat lives on, right? So your patients have a great place to be taken care of. Your team has a great place to work, and the mission continues so that your practice doesn't retire with you one day. So Jay, psyched for the next few conversations. It's going to be a blast.
Yeah, man. And I'm smiling right now because not only are we going to share these great pieces of information to help other sports chiropractors be successful, but we're going to share some of our failures along the way. Because I know I've had a ton, but we learn from those failures. And if we can help one person not make the same mistake that I've made or we've made, then we've done our job. So everybody out there in the fixed sports chiropractic world, I just want to say thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Dr. Stephen Franson, for an awesome Facebook Live event today. Can't wait for next week. We're doing it next week, right? Or is it next month? No, it's next week.
I think it's next week. And
next week. Yeah, same time. All right.
As I promised, Jay, I want to make sure I give away a copy of this. So for the first person that writes remarkable down in the show notes, just write remarkable, all caps. We'll reach out to you and we'll get your address. I'm going to send you a signed copy of my remarkable guide to building the remarkable practice.
I love it, man. I've read that book. You better write, you people out there listening, you better write right now, write your name in there. All right. So Stephen can send you that book. Guys, thank you so much for today. Really appreciate your time. I know how busy y'all are, but looking forward to next week.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks,
Bye,
Steve.
guys.